Today we will be talking about the EGR system for the Mazda 626, as well as Mazda MX-6, Ford Probe, possibly Protege, and Ford Telstar. I don't know if everything's going to be completely compatible between a Protege and a Telstar, but for the MX-6 and the Ford Probe it should. So your EGR system, let's just say this is where your EGR is, and there are different versions of EGRs for different models of 626 Probe MX-6s, including the V6 or the i4, the automatic versus the manual transmission. This is what an EGR looks like for a 93 to 97. 1998 to 2002 EGRs are located about right here. Here's your intake manifold where your throttle body would be, and your EGR is kind of mounted right here for the 5th gens, which is a 1998 to 2002 5th generation Mazda 626. The 4th generation 626, which is 93 to 97, our EGRs are located about like so. And for the MX-6, this would be the 2nd generation MX-6, would normally be mounted right. So this EGR valve is located all the way down underneath of here. Very, very hard to get to. About the only way that you can get to it is by taking out your intake, which would be located about right here. Take out your throttle body and your intake runner or intake tube. You might not have to take out your filter box assembly, but you will need to take off your throttle body to get to it. And then there are two fairly large screws, which I probably have misplaced around here somewhere. Two fairly large bolts that go right here, and the bolt heads on this will strip very easily. So it goes like that, and you have to reach your hand in a really awkward position down around the EGR in order to get to it. So you might need something that has a little bit of a bend to it, like a crow's foot or a half moon wrench, or some type of little ratcheting. I believe they're 10mm bolts that go on top of there. Anyway, once you get your EGR off, and we'll start with the EGR inspection right here. Now that we have this, let's just say theoretically, off of your car, the first thing that you want to do is inspect the diaphragm. As you push in that diaphragm, as that goes up and down, it will push air out of this vacuum tube. Now, if you plug this, you can't push that diaphragm at all, period. At least you should not be able to. That's one of the tests. Put your hand on this finger, or put your hand on this finger. Put your finger on this hole and make sure that you cannot squeeze this diaphragm down. Another test, and that's the pressure, let's just say positive pressure. Negative pressure, you would depress the diaphragm all the way down, put your finger on top of the diaphragm, and leave it there. And then inspect that that diaphragm is not moving. It should not move. It should hold air. It should hold that suction. And now I will release the diaphragm and it should snap back. There you go. So the diaphragm on this is good. Now we will whip out our multimeters. You will need a multimeter. A lot of the testing for the EGR system, you will also need a vacuum pump. I do not have a vacuum pump, so make sure you check your manual. This video will be posted on Mazda626.net as a very lengthy how to test your EGR tutorial, and it will also go into testing for i4s versus V6s, ATX versus MTXs, 4th gens and 5th gens. This is going to be pretty tricky for me to film because the new PlaySport does not have an LCD module that I can see what is currently being filmed, so that's why in some of the, I guess, my past videos, it's been a little off-center, out of focus. I apologize for that. Doing the best I can with what I got. Okay, this is your EGR. The easiest test for your EGR when it is in place on your car is to disconnect the hose from the EGR and stop that hole. If your car runs really rough or stalls, it means your EGR is functioning okay. That's what it's supposed to do. There are more tests that need to be done, but that's just a quick indicator. Next, you will want to take the EGR off of your car. And when you take it off, you'll notice there's a diaphragm in here. You want to make sure that that diaphragm moves up and down smoothly. If not, clean it. There is a what's known as a piston or piston inside of here attached to that diaphragm. There is a shaft running through the middle. There's a shaft running directly through the middle of here, and there's a stopper on the end, and it stops about halfway right here. So when you depress this diaphragm, I know you can't see inside there, but if you have a little flashlight, you can actually see the stopper inside of there. And you'll know if you need to clean it out, if carbon buildup, and carbon buildup will get in there. There's quite a lot in there. And carbon buildup will stop this up and stop it from sending out the correct readings. Now, I guess is a good time to show you how that entire EGR system operates. Here's your EGR pipe fitting. This comes from wraps all the way around the engine. Goes on. This is a 7/8 inch nut that goes on here, so you're going to need that big ol' honkin' wrench that I was talking about in the disassembly video. You got to crack that open, and that's where that goes. Now your EGR gas from your exhaust manifold or exhaust header, if you have an aftermarket eBay header, gets shot all the way around the engine into here. And then it travels through here and kind of makes a 90-degree turn into your EGR, like so. It's hard to see there. Comes through here, gets shot into your EGR, will make its way back into your intake. And the EGR gas gets shot back into the intake, which you are probably familiar if you have ever taken off your throttle body and looked straight down into your intake manifold. This first little divot down in here, that's where your EGR gas comes out. That way it's kind of close and easy to clean. If it were, let's say, to shoot out all the way in the back of your intake manifold, there would be absolutely no way for you to get back there and clean it. It comes out right here on purpose, just so it's easy to get to. You can get a pick tool on it, and you can clean it, you can get some carb cleaner in there and whatever. And cleaning out the EGR is pretty much the same exact process. You would clean, use a whole bunch of carburetor cleaner. I also have a tutorial on how to clean this. Image tutorial, because I'm not sure if I had my camera back then. Might have been one of the ones I did without a camera. Pick out as much around the stopper as you can. There's a stopper right here. Pick out as much as you can around the stopper. Picking out this top area is not really necessary. This top area does not serve much of any purpose other than to allow airflow out. So as long as that is free and clear, you really don't even need to worry about cleaning that out. In my tutorial, I put a Lego here, basically something jammed in here that will prevent this diaphragm from coming down, and thus the stopper from going back. So if you depress this diaphragm and you spray carb cleaner in this top port, the carb cleaner will come out of this bottom port. If this diaphragm is released down, you spray something in here, nothing will come out there. And that just demonstrates the flow of air. And once you get your hands on this, you'll get a pretty good understanding about how it works, and you won't even really need my video because it's self-explanatory. Before you start any cleaning procedure at all, always remove the sensor from the housing. And there's really nothing much to the sensor, it's just a plunger. Okay, so that's all that's in there. It's a plunger. And when that diaphragm is pushed down, that plunger is pressed in and out, and that's how you get your readings. It's as simple as that. It's a pressure sensor. With that in mind, this is what we are going to be electronically testing. You don't have to remove the entire EGR unless you want to clean it of carbon If you just want to test the sensor, this is all that you have to remove. This is your exhaust gas recirculation position sensor, because it senses the position of the diaphragm. Turn your multimeter to 200K because one of these readings should be, let's just say 2700 resistance. So you're going to want to go above 2000K. Now the way a multimeter works is no matter how high you set it, you could set it up to 1,000,000. It will still read, let's say your resistance is 1 ohm. It will still read 1.0 ohms. You just want to try and get it as close as you possibly can. If you go over, it will, depending on the meter, sometimes it will beep, sometimes it will give you a negative value, sometimes it will just give you a 1, sometimes it will give you a 0, sometimes it will say, hey, you're stupid, or who knows, I don't know. So it all depends on the different multimeter. So we're testing for resistance. And from the top of your EGR sensor, we have pins C, B, and A. So if you turn it upside down, it's basically ABC. You want to measure it this way, CBA, because that's how the diagrams show it, and that's how we will be testing it. Although for you it'll look upside down. I guess I'll just test it the way that I normally would. I have my manual right here, my 1995 little handbook, and it says AB should be approximately 2.7 kiloohms. That's 2.7 thousand. Okay, this is the 2.7 thousand. Okay, so we're getting 2.1. I should be getting 2.7. So when that happens, you want to make sure that your plunger is fully working. It's not sticking at all or anything like that. Okay, so we've got 2.1. Now watch what happens when I depress the plunger. Absolutely nothing. And I was expecting that. Yeah. So what's next? Pins A and C, which are, let's just say pins 1 and 3. Okay, now I've got pins 1 and 3, and I should be getting approximately 0.5 ohms. Okay, I'm getting 0.1 ohms. Now watch what happens when I depress the plunger just a little bit. See those ohms start going up, 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 up. Now you can see basically the upper end is 2.2. Now 2.2 for the EGR would be full open, right? So what's the full open value? 2.7. So again, I am 5 or 0.5 lower than what I should be. From that, you can probably guess that this is not going to be a good EGR sensor. I'm probably looking at a bad sensor, but we still have 2 more pins to test. B and C should be 2.4. I think I got it right there. And it's at 2.2. And you depress the plunger fully, and I'm at 0.01, which is correct. But let's just take that down. Let's take that down to 2. And we'll try that one again. So now I'm down to 2K. So let's just see by how much I'm off. So that's 0.75. So basically, instead of reading 0.1, which is what it should be reading, it's reading 0.075. So again, it's low. So all of the sensors, all of the readings coming out of this EGR sensor are too low, out of spec. Out of spec in some respects by a lot. The first thing that I was doing was testing it in place. And I was like, why am I getting readings so low? And so I decided, well, it must not be fully depressing, right? That's what's messing up my readings. So I took it out, I cleaned the crap out of the whole thing, I put back the sensor, right? And I tried doing the readings again. Of course, they're still going to be the same. So I was like, well, I can just take the sensor off and read it that way. And of course, all of the readings were the same, either in the sensor or not. So if you have a problem reading it with the sensor. If you want to be lazy and you don't want to take the sensor out and the sensor readings are wrong, take the sensor out and do the readings with this off of here. Now I suggest that because when you fit this in, it's very hard to tell, but when you fit this in, it doesn't quite sit flush, which means that you have to depress this ever so slightly, and it has a little springy effect to it, which means that tiny bit that you're depressing it is affecting the reading. So I suggest that you take a reading on with it installed and off. And if both are out of spec, then you know it's bad. I'm pretty sure my diaphragm is good. It holds good vacuum. My sensor, for whatever reason, the readings are out of spec. I've already looked up as many different manuals as I could, just in the hopes that one day this was replaced with the incorrect EGR. It's not. It's the correct EGR sensor. So I need to find a new replacement EGR sensor. Unfortunately, they don't sell just the sensor. You have to buy the whole frickin' diaphragm with the sensor in it. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna go find a junkyard car and take that off and just be fine. There's no reason. I'm sure these are two completely separate part numbers. There's no reason to have to buy an entire EGR with the sensor. Although, you know, the two go together, you certainly need one and the other, but if that's why they're modular, that's why this can be taken apart, so you can replace this. My ohms are out of spec. I need to replace this. So that's how you diagnose a bad EGR position sensor, ladies and gentlemen. Fairly cool, huh? Not for me. Good for you.